The Know Your Foe series continues with a must-win game for the Badgers.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. I am your host, Rajiv, in for a midweek Know Your Foe episode this week talking about Maryland. I am going solo tonight. It's very late on the Pacific time zone. So Justin's already asleep. You know, he lives in Wisconsin. So I'm doing this one by myself. I could only record late tonight. But we're talking about Maryland. I've got some great guests. We're going to introduce them in a minute and show you the video that we did with them, kind of previewing Maryland. Look, Maryland's not really a team we know a ton about. Obviously, Billy Edwards came from there, which is huge. So I do ask them a little bit about Billy Edwards in that interview as well. So I'm going to cut to that now and come back here and talk about the critical importance of this game. All right, we are joined by an all-star crew here, Michael, Sam, and Brendan of the Under the Shell podcast to talk about all things Maryland football and, of course, Billy Edwards. That's definitely going to be a topic of discussion. Thanks for joining us, guys. Michael, let's start with you. Where can people find Under the Shell podcast? Tell the guys about what you're doing.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having us on. You can find us anywhere you want to listen to your podcast, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcast, Anchor, anywhere where there's a podcast, you can find us. And the three of us we're all entering our senior year right now at the University of Maryland. We started this podcast our freshman year. We all met at orientation. So this is pretty special for us to be entering year 4 now of the podcast all together still.
I love it. You know, you don't often see the podcast done from people who are currently at the school. So I love that. I think it's great. You're probably going to end up doing this for hopefully tons of years in the future, which will be a lot of fun for you guys. And yeah, podcasting is pretty fun. So good. Welcome to the show. Let's just start here. Sam, I'll come to you on this one. Overall pulse of the program. You can read off. There's a lot of publications certainly picking Maryland, like my own school, Wisconsin, picking us low in the Big Ten. Maryland is certainly one of those picked a little bit low in the conference. From the student perspective, from the fan perspective, what's the pulse of the program right now? Are you feeling confidence with the new freshman quarterback? And obviously your coach has been there for a while. How are things feeling right now at Maryland?
Not good. I think that I think it's pretty blunt to say that last season was a significant step back for where the Maryland football program had been for the past couple of years. And I think also a reminder of, unfortunately, the Mike Locksley tenure hasn't gone, I think, exactly how people planned. Yes, he's had a few 8-win seasons. Yes, he won 3 straight bowl games. Big steps for a program that was left in disarray after DJ Durkin departed and the tragic death of Jordan McNair. But if you look at the stats, there is only one coach in all of Power 5 football who has been at a singular school for at least 7 seasons and has a worse winning percentage than Mike Locksley. That's Justin Wilcox at Cal, and he had a team that was ranked. Mike Locksley has never had a team that's been ranked in the top 25. He's never beaten a ranked opponent since he's been at Maryland, and last season he won 1 Big Ten game. The program is obviously in a spot that I think this season and potentially next season are going to play a big role in what the future of Locksley at Maryland is. You talk to boosters around the program, you talk to influential people, and they're pretty disappointed with how last season went. And I think are kind of looking at this year as a big turning point. I don't want to say that if this year goes bad, Locksley will be fired, but I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. Obviously, you talked about the overall health, bringing in a highly touted freshman quarterback like Malik Washington, who was pretty prized around the country. Penn State, Oregon, all had offers out to him as a high 4-star. And then in the 2026 class, the number 1 recruit in the country, Zion Ely from St. Francis, which is in Baltimore. So those two are obviously kind of crown jewels, and the recruiting classes have been solid. But I think that last year, heading into this season, has really left some significant questions about what the future of the program looks like.
So, Sam, why does he still have a job? That to me is why is he still there?
Well, I think the buyout plays a large role in that. Right now, it's around $12 million, I think. And Maryland Athletics just hired a new basketball coach, Buzz Williams. They just hired a new athletic director, Jim Smith. That's another reason. Damon Evans, who departed to SMU in the offseason, and Mike Locksley were extremely close. They had a very good working relationship. Damon and Locksley had known each other prior to the job, and I think that played a role. I also think that expectations had been he had raised the expectations. He won 8 games, for 2 straight years, won 3 straight bowl games. That had been a place that Maryland football hadn't been in a long time. But the problem is once you raise those expectations to what you consider to be the standard, and then you go far below them, people aren't going to readjust the calibration for what they expect your seasons to be. And I think that he has a job still, obviously, because Maryland is not in a financial place or in a athletic department place to fire a coach after one down season. But I think that if this turns into a trend, and you look at the overall kind of body of work, then the job becomes even more and more concerning. But a mix of a new athletic director, money, strong seasons in the past, and decent recruiting classes, I think those are kind of the main reasons for why Locksley still has a job.
Seems fair. Seems very fair. Brendan, we'll come to you. One of the questions that all Badger fans have obviously want to talk about is Billy Edwards. Give us a quick kind of rundown of what you think of Billy Edwards, how he was last year. And I mean, from what you can see of our team and obviously knowing him, is he going to be successful for us?
It's tough. The Billy Edwards experiment at Maryland really only lasted one season, which was obviously last season. He filled in a couple times when Talia Tagovailoa would go down. But it's interesting. I think we talked about this a lot last year, at least the three of us on our podcast, of how Maryland's biggest issue last year was never Billy Edwards. It was O-line. It was a multitude of issues that, he was obviously someone who got a lot of the blame. But at the end of the day, he was not the issue. The way I would describe him is he is a solid quarterback for, top programs. Like in the Big Ten, he's not going to be the best quarterback in the Big Ten, but he's also not going to be the worst. He's somewhere in the middle. I think the biggest thing with him is he's not ever going to win you games. Kind of like we were talking about last year. The pieces around him are going to be what makes him successful. Has some of that rushing ability, but nothing that jumps off the charts. Is a decent game manager. I think the biggest thing that he couldn't do at Maryland last year was, when they would go down early in games, with the exception of the USC game, he's really not the quarterback that's going to pull you out and make these fantastic, incredible plays that are going to get you to, change the amount of win you have. And I think looking for Wisconsin, I would expect him to have a pretty similar year to as he had at Maryland, where he's going to be a game manager, but he's not going to be someone who is going to, pull you out of the depths in crazy situations. So I wouldn't expect him to have, a ton more success at Wisconsin than he had at Maryland.
One of the things, yeah, go ahead, Sam, go ahead.
So I covered Billy all of last year and did a really big feature on him and got to kind of know him and his family. And I think that one thing that kind of goes unnoticed is there's a lot of stories about Billy Edwards that make me think he'll have success in a new place. I think that transfer quarterbacks, a lot of what goes into that is being able to kind of garner a locker room and lead in a sense, especially if you're going to be a new face of the program. There are high expectations. He's getting a lot of money. But Edwards, I think, is fit for that. There's a story of when he was in high school as a freshman, like a 100-pound freshman, he walked up to the varsity coach and was like, "Hey, my name's Billy Edwards, and I'm going to be a starting D1 quarterback." He writes notes all in his bathroom in sticky notes that say, one of them says, "It's amazing what you can accomplish when no one cares who gets the credit." I think that those are all things. You talk to people around the locker room. Edwards was never the problem last year, as Brendan said. I want to push back a little bit on the idea of him being a game manager, because I think that kind of leads to the notion that he just checks it down. He's not really someone who's going to take a lot of downfield throws. I don't think that's the case. I think Billy Edwards actually does have a pretty strong arm. He has good arm talent. He's able to make some very big-time throws. A lot of that didn't happen last year, like Brendan said, because of the offensive line, which wasn't able to hold up in 5-man pass pro. And also Maryland's system doesn't necessarily call for a ton of deep shots. But Edwards made a lot of really, really good throws, especially early in the season, that I think showed a lot of arm talent. I think he also made a lot of dumb decisions. Like, I remember the Minnesota game, for example. The game started and he threw into double coverage on the first play, one of the first drives of the game, easy interception. And I think that in Wisconsin's offense, which historically has strong offensive line, I know it's regressed a little bit in recent years. I think he's going to be a better fit in there. I also think Edwards might do well in a more pro-style approach. And I'm really, really interested to see what that kind of looks like. I know Wisconsin's shifted away from like the Paul Christ era and runs a little more up tempo, but they still, at its core, want to run the football, want to really approach the game in kind of a different way than Maryland does. And I'm really, really fascinated to see how he does.
Yeah, especially this year now because we've switched back. We went to that air raid, and then that experiment totally fell in its face. So now we're back to where Jeff Grimes, our new offensive coordinator. Power run game is going to be a big thing, and certainly that'll be key. I'm glad you brought that up, Sam, because leadership is one of the things. I got to interview Billy at Big Ten Media Days, and he really has a swagger about him that I think is really palpable. And I think that leadership is something that everyone at Wisconsin's really noticed so far, which is great. So thanks for your perspective on that. Mike, your new quarterback is likely going to be Malik Washington, or Justin Martin, I believe, is the other guy that's in that competition. Let's kind of transition to looking at this season. How do we feel about Malik Washington? Is he going to be certainly a guy with strong athletic ability? I think he runs a 4.6 40. That's obviously pretty solid. Is he going to be the starter as a true freshman? And do we feel like he's going to be a guy for you and turn things around?
Malik Washington has about all the hype you can as an incoming freshman. The hometown kid, the 4-star, top 5 quarterback in the nation, decides to stay at his hometown school, commits to Maryland with offers from nearly every school in the country. He's got a lot of hype around his name. The question is, can the offense support him? I think, we just talked about Billy Edwards, last year starting quarterback, leaving through the portal. Also lost your top running back through the portal, Roman Hemby going to Indiana. Lost your top wide receiver, Ty Felton, to the NFL draft. There's a lot of turnover on this side of the ball, but I do think that they made some good additions to past offseason to kind of supplement their losses. Octavian Smith, that's one of the top returners on the offense, but then you got guys like Caleb Webb from Tennessee, Jalil Farouk from Oklahoma. Those receivers are going to get big time playing time this upcoming year. You also got tight end Dorian Fleming, another transfer coming in who was pretty good his freshman year. That's another guy who Malik's going to be targeting a lot. Then you also got running back wise, Nolan Ray. He's a returner. He was more so like a third down back last year, going to be stepping up into a bigger role. So I think Malik's got all the talent to succeed. I think it depends on what's going on around him. There's a lot of turnover, both on offense and on defense, like we'll talk about in a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see. Also, just touching on the offensive line a bit, it's going to be a completely different offensive line from last season. 0 turnover there. So again, it'll be interesting to see how Malik can play behind all that.
Yeah, it's certainly the offensive line got a lot of talk last year. It's one of the things that we have really talked a lot about because we can provide Billy Edwards a much stronger offensive line than Maryland could. So hopefully that can shake some things out. Sam, as far as going into that a little bit more, we talked about Farouk and Webb and some of those key transfers. What would you identify as the strongest unit on the offense, and what would you identify as the weakest unit on the offense?
Oh man, I'm pretty down on this Maryland team. I don't think the roster's really in a great spot. So I'll say at the strong point, I like some of the pass catchers. I don't think it's as good as I think in a weird way, this is probably one of the weakest units that Maryland's had amongst its receivers because they've actually produced a ton of really, really strong guys. But I do think it's a nice collection of players with very unique skill sets that don't really cross over a ton. Jalil Farouk, I think, is going to be a really good player. Oklahoma transfer was really good in Norman. Had to sit out a lot of summer ball with a ankle injury, but I think he's back. He's healthy. He's going to be a really dynamic player. I would expect him to take a lot of targets. Mike mentioned Fleming, who I like as a Georgia State transfer. I think he'll be the best tight end they've had since Chigakonkwo, who went to the NFL. And then a guy who I think could emerge as a young player who I've heard get some talk, Ryan Manning, I believe he's a junior wide receiver, might be a sophomore. It's like a weird redshirt thing with him. He really shined in the spring game, made a lot of nice plays, and obviously that's the spring game, but he possesses a lot of the downfield threat that I think Washington excels at. He's got a very capable downfield tracking ability. He also has some good speed. I think Ryan Manning could start alongside Farouk, and then you have Octavian Smith in the slot. I like the pass catchers there. The offensive line, I think, is going to be abysmal. There is not a lot of talent there. They do return Isaiah Wright, who was injured all of last year, transfer from Buffalo, and they bring in a high 4-star named Jalen Gilchrist, who is expected to start, I think, amongst the offensive line. But having to start a true freshman, never a good thing when you're in the trenches. And there's not a ton of talent around them. They lost to Terez Davis, transferred, and Isaiah Bunyan. No, Isaiah Bunyan's back. There's another O lineman. I'm blanking on the name that transferred, but there's just basically zero reason for confidence in this offensive line, especially when the unit last year struggled as much as it did. I just don't think that there's going to be the ability for them to hang really for against capable Big Ten pass rushes and 5-man protection sets. And that worries me with a kid like Washington that, you know, as a freshman, you don't want to get your star quarterback constantly hit, constantly worried and shuffling throughout the pocket, because even when if he's not getting sacked, if those pressures start to mount and build up, you're going to kind of alter his development because he's not going to trust the pocket. He's not going to be able to make the proper reads because he's going to be constantly worried about where the next edge rusher or interior pressure is coming from. So I would say the O-line is the biggest worry.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that, especially in our league, right? This 18-team Big Ten is monster now. And I mean, there's a lot of, it's very, very, you have to be able to have that strength up, those guys up front to protect that. And the other thing you worry about with a guy like Malik Washington now all of a sudden is if he has a bad year with the O-line not really protecting him, then you instantly think transfer, right? Because that's what happens in the day and age that we're in. Brendan, let's transfer to the defense a little bit. Let's transition to the defense. Tell us about a position of strength and weakness on the defense. How do you guys feel like you line up on that side of the ball?
I feel similar to Sam with finding it hard to think of a strength. I think the weakness is obvious. Defensive back room. Maryland got beat over the top a lot last year, and that was with Dante Trader, who obviously got drafted, and also losing him was tough. But the biggest issue is that Maryland's defensive back room, I believe only has one senior, which is Jalen Husky. They just lack so much experience in that area, and it's going to be very tough, I think, going into the season this year. Having the same issues that they had last year is they didn't replenish anything, and they lost to the better guys. The biggest strength, I don't know. I'm at a loss. Mike and Sam, what are your thoughts on the biggest strength? I guess maybe the D line and linebackers, but what do you think?
No, I think the D line is going to be not great either. Linebackers, I think Daniel Wingate could have a good season. He's a solid player. I do like the defensive coordinator, the coaching. Ted Manciano, I think could bring a lot of creative looks to kind of generate some pressure. So that I would point to is Maryland, I think, is going to be more creative with some of their blitzes and some of the ability to get home than they have been in the past. So that I would point to as a strength, which is never great when you're pointing to your defensive coordinator as a strength of the unit.
Yeah, I would agree with linebackers, but at the same time, the Terps also lost who was going to be their top 2 linebackers coming into the year, Caleb Wheaton and Kellen Wyatt, to the transfer portal. So again, that is just another position that's been decimated through the portal.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's not a ton of optimism coming from you guys, which I think is fair. I mean, I think most people would agree that Maryland is not going to have the best season, and it's one of the reasons that we, as Badger fans who are desperate for some back to success, we lost our bull streak after 22 years. That's, finishing 5-7 is just atrocious for us, and we need to get back to it. Maryland is certainly one of those games we've identified as a huge opportunity for us. We'll end the show here, guys, or end the segment here talking about your overall record predictions. I'll start with Mike, then Sam, then Brendan. Give me kind of what is your best case scenario. Give me your floor, your ceiling, and then your final prediction for what you think can actually happen. We'll start with you, Mike.
I would say the floor is 4-8. You get lucky when the first 3 games and then win one Big Ten game. I think the ceiling 7-5. I think they could, if they string a couple Big Ten wins together. I mean, the schedule is doable. That's the thing. You look at the schedule; it's definitely a doable schedule. It's just, can the Terps roster win the games that they need to? And in the past, when they've had decent rosters, they've still lost games they shouldn't have lost. They've lost to Michigan State. They've lost to Northwestern. They're losing the games they shouldn't be losing. Now they have a subpar roster, and I don't know if they can reach that ceiling. I'm probably going to say 4-8 is probably where they land.
Okay, Sam.
Yeah, Mike makes a good point. We're talking about the roster being, not in a great place, but I do think that this schedule lines up as one of the easier ones in the Big Ten. They avoid Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State. They do have to play Michigan, but all of the top teams in the Big Ten, they're kind of getting not on the schedule. So that is where I would put the ceiling at as potentially, and this would be Malik hits, the O-line takes improvements, 8-4. And kind of getting back to where they were at. I think this floor of 4-8 is way more likely than the ceiling, though. That's one Big Ten win. You win your non-conference. I think we kind of all expect Maryland to be 3-0 in the non-con. It's a pretty light schedule there. And then realistically, I've thought about this a lot just over the past couple of weeks in preparation for this season. I think I've landed on 5-7 and feel pretty good about 5-7. I think that they'll be able to sneak out 2 wins. With the schedule that they have, but I don't think it's going to be, a season of a lot of wins. I think if for Maryland fans, where the optimism would come from is Malik takes big steps. You can see him gradually improving throughout the year. And then you go into next year, hopefully for them with really a stable of guys and core that have emerged in kind of those young seasons. So that's what I would identify as kind of the room for or areas of success for Maryland this year.
Brendan, what are your thoughts on the on your season outlook?
I think the floor is 3 wins. I mean, realistically, they're going to win all 3 out of conference games. And if they don't, they have much bigger issues there, and maybe Locks will be gone midseason. But they're going to win the first 3 out of conference games. And then Loxley's never really shown me anything that makes me believe he's going to win more than 2 or 3 Big Ten games. And with the lack of talent on this roster, I don't see it happening. So I think it's very possible Maryland, once again, I mean, Maryland really last year should not have won any Big Ten games. They got very lucky in that USC game. If they don't block that kick, then they don't win that game. So 3 wins is possible. On the other side, the ceiling, I think they could get to 6 just based on what Sam and Mike were talking about with the easiness of the schedule. In theory, Maryland should be able to beat, UCLA, Rutgers, and Michigan State, just because of the, that those teams aren't very good themselves. Those are the games that they highlight they could win. And then, if they are stronger, maybe Wisconsin or Washington or something like that, another game they could be competitive in. But I'll offer another option for the ceiling, which is just playing Michigan very competitively or making that a close game, which Maryland has done in the past in certain trap games when Michigan comes to College Park right before the final week of their season when they play Ohio State. Stuff like that, playing them close or giving them a run would be probably the ceiling, because realistically, this team probably isn't going to make a bowl game this year.
Michigan might be the toughest game on your schedule. It's like the 5th toughest game on our schedule. I don't know if you've seen Wisconsin's schedule, but your schedule is really envious. Like, I would love to have Maryland's schedule. Wisconsin's schedule is absolutely the worst in the country. Mike, I think you were going to say something.
I'll say this, that week 4 game, Terps at Wisconsin, if Malik Washington walks into Madison and wins that game, the Terps start out 4-0, there's going to be real conversations about, 1, Luke Fickell's job security at Wisconsin, and number 2, is this Terps team for real? Is Malik Washington for real? I'm very excited for that game.
I don't expect that to happen, given that we took your quarterback, and I think he's going to have something he wants to prove in that game as well. Plus, we've got some of those in the trenches. So we've got some better players in those trenches and compared to what I think you guys are talking about. But listen, it absolutely has to be a win for us. And believe me, it is something that we know we're going to win our first 2 games. We know we're losing the 3rd game because we're playing in Alabama. And then after that, the Maryland game kind of pops up before an incredibly tough stretch where we have Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State, and Oregon in back-to-back weeks. So pretty bad. Mike, Sam, and Brendan from Under the Shell podcast, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time today, and good luck to the Terps this season.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you to the guys from Under the Shell. Go check out their work if you are a Maryland fan or just interested in anything about Maryland sports. They cover everything, not just football. And by the way, I just want to say, I love that those guys, started this podcast while they were in school. They're still in school at Maryland. They're going to do this for a while. So I think that's really cool. And so good luck to them. A lot of interesting things there. And let's just kind of start here with this game. Okay. One of the interesting things that I thought that they said, jumping right to the end, was their floor and ceiling predictions. Now, when I first heard them say, all of them pretty much, that their floor was 4 or 5 wins, I was like, are you kidding me? They're not that good of a team. And then I looked at their schedule. And let me tell you, if the Badgers had Maryland's schedule, it's an 8 or 9 win season. Like, it is really that. There's stark differences, right? They play Michigan. They play Michigan State at the end of the season, but that's pretty much it. They play IU and Illinois as well. They don't have Ohio State. They don't have Oregon. They don't have Penn State. They just don't have a lot of really tough games. And of course, their non-con is really nothing, although Northern Illinois is not going to be an easy game, I don't think. But that being said, for us, we have the tough schedule, and that is what it is, right? We've talked about it a lot. It's to the point now where we just have to go out and show what we can do. And we're not going to have the greatest record. We're not going to have a 10-win season, but we might still be able to surprise people. In order for us to have any kind of season, this is a must-win game. I think it's an absolutely the Big Ten game that you think you've got to win that. There are others on the schedule, right? You can look at the Washington game potentially. You can look at one of Indiana, Illinois potentially. You can look at Minnesota. But that Maryland game is, okay, you have to win that. Imagine for a minute if we don't. Imagine for a minute if we're 2-2 after the Maryland game. Think about what that reaction show is going to be like, first of all. But think about the entire everything around this club, the entire mood. It's going to just be awful if that happens. And I don't want to just put that out there and say, like, it's got to be done, but it just does. Like, Maryland is pretty much by everyone, even like you heard one of those guys say, like, they just have no real faith in this program right now and this team, and Loxley for that matter. But I mean, if we don't get that game at home, it can really send our season into a tailspin, right? And the mood is horrible at that point. If we get the win, which I think we will, we're 3-1 after the first 4, which every Badger fan out there expects us to be 3-1 after the first 4. Anything can happen, right? We have a bye week at that point. And there's some potential injuries that we've had in the first few weeks. And then we have our big first game of October against Michigan. And then, of course, it starts the gauntlet that is our Big Ten schedule. But you've got to take advantage of the teams that you can take advantage of. And this is one of those games. There's not a ton more to say about this. I think when you look at their lineup and you look at everything that those guys said, Brendan, those guys, like, there's not a ton of great players on that team. Certainly the quarterback has really good athletic ability, but he's unproven. He's a freshman, Malik Washington. We don't really know what he's going to be, but obviously those fans certainly expect him to be a guy that has good tools, but they've got some transfer receivers that they mentioned. So they're gonna be a team that potentially could have a decent season. But let's also not forget, we're their first real team, right? I mean, they're playing horrible non-con, except Northern Illinois. That's a decent team, but we're their first Big Ten game, or their first really like true test, and it's on the road. We have to take advantage. And if we don't, there are bigger problems. One of the things that I thought was interesting that they mentioned Billy Edwards. I talked about that at the top of the show. I asked them that because I was really curious kind of what their thoughts were. And the first thing they said, I think it was Brendan that said it, he wasn't the problem, right? And we knew that. There were some mistakes. There were certainly some decision-making questions that they mentioned, which is interesting. But we don't really know what we're going to get with Billy Edwards in a Jeff Grimes system, in a system that is a little more built for him. And also I think that the players around him, like the Maryland offensive line was pathetically bad last year. Our offensive line is going to be far better. Our running game is going to be far better. Our receivers are better. There's better units around him. But the fact that he wasn't the problem is a good sign, right? It's a good thing that says he was certainly one of the bright spots on that team, absent some certainly poor decisions at times. But I think all of that gets improved. So I do think, we'll see that. Also, Billy Edwards going up against his old team, that's an advantage, right? Like, he's not going to want to lose that game. First Big Ten home game. There's a lot of things going right for us, I think, to say that we can probably chalk this one up as a win. We always kind of do confidence level sort of things at the end of these. My confidence for this game is 90+%. Honestly, it's about as high as you can get for any Big Ten game we have on the schedule. Just to remind everybody what that is, bottom of the screen here, if you're watching on YouTube, like it's in the back half of that first 4 where we can really be 3-1. And then of course it kind of goes a bit downhill from there as far as the difficulty level. So yeah, again, not too much else to say. Avs to be a win. Thank you so much to the guys from Under the Shell. They did a great job, and good luck with your podcast as you continue to grow that. I'm really proud of them for kind of doing that while they're in school. I wish I would have done this when I was in school. Pretty cool stuff. Of course, back then this wasn't really around. But yeah, so we'll be back again this weekend. Nick Osen's coming back on the show on Sunday to do week 2 practice recap, right? So we had a great show last week with Nick Osen and Jake Kokorowski. This week, Nick's coming back. We're going to do week 2 practice recap, all kinds of good stuff. This is the fun part, right? This is when we actually get to start talking about football. We'll be back again next week with more Know Your Foe series. Thanks for joining us. And as always, on Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.